Sometimes it takes the unexpected to put things into perspective. The world has changed, and we are all adapting. We will continue on with a renewed drive and passion in support of our global community of artists. We will return with some adjustments, but one thing will remain the same. We are here to change lives through the power of performance.
Hello, and welcome to this session of the NATS Virtual National Conference. My name is Diana Allen, current Vice President for Auditions and incoming NATS President-elect. In recital this evening, I'm pleased to introduce Matt Hill, our 2020 NATS Artist Award winner. Please also stay for the Military Service Ensemble panel immediately following the recital. Matt, sponsored by teacher Elizabeth Daniels, represented the Mid-Atlantic region in the NATS auditions in New York City this past January. He also represents our country as a tenor in the United States Air Force Band singing sergeants. As his pianist this evening, Christopher Kurtzer has performed across the world as soloist and collaborative pianist and as assistant vocal coach with opera companies throughout the United States. Complete biographical information for Matt and Christopher can be found in your digital program book and this session's listing in your guidebook app. Now sit back, silence your electronic devices, and enjoy this recital. And thank you for making the NATS Virtual National Conference part of your professional development activities this year. Now, join me in welcoming Matt and Christopher.
Summer is coming, I know it. Summer is coming, I know it, I know it, I know it. Night again, leaf again, life again, love again, yes, my wild little poet. Sing the new year in under the blue. Last year you sang it as gladly. New. Sing the new year in under the blue. Is it then so new that you must carol as madly? Love again, song again, nest again, young again. Never a prophet so crazy. And hardly a daisy as yet, little friend. See, there is hardly a daisy, hardly a daisy. Here again, here, happy year. Oh, wobble uncheaten, wobble unbeaten. Summer is coming, my dear, and all the winters are hidden. Summer is coming, my dear, and all the winters are hidden. All the winters are hidden. Summer is coming. Summer is coming. Summer is coming, and all the winters are hidden. still as bright. Though the heart be ne'er as loving, and the moon be still as bright. Though the heart be ne'er as loving, and the moon be still as bright. Though the sword outwears the sheath, and the soul wears out the breast, and the heart itself must pause, and love itself have rest. Though the night was made for loving, and the day returns too soon, yet we'll go no more a-roving by the light of the moon. Though the heart be ne'er as loving, and the moon be still as bright. Though the moon be still as bright. Ich trage meine Miene vorwärts stumm, im Herzen und im Sinne mit mir herum. Ja, dass ich dich gefunden, du liebes Kind, das freut mich alle Tage, die mir beschieden sind. Und ob auch der Himmel trübe, schwarz die Nacht, hell leuchtet meine Liebe, goldsonnige Pracht. Und lügt auch die Welt in Sünden, so tut mir's weh. Die Arge muss erblinden vor deiner Unschuld, deine Unschuld. stumm im Herzen und im Sinne mit mir herum. Ja, dass ich dich gefunden, du liebes Kind, das freut mich alle Tage, die mir beschieden sind. Ich ging den Weg entlang, der einsam lag. Den stets allein ich gehe jeden Tag. Die Heide schweigt, das Feld ist menschenleer. Der Wind nur webt im Knickbusch vor mir her. Weit liegt vor mir die Straße ausgedehnt. Es hat mein Herz nur dich ersehnt. Und kämest du, ein Wunder wär's für mich. Ich neigte mich vor dir, ich liebe dich. Und im Begegnen nur ein einziger Blick des ganzen Lebens wär es mein Geschick. Und richtest du dein Auge kalt auf mich, ich trotze, Mädchen, dir, ich liebe dich. Doch wenn dein schönes Auge grüßt und lacht, wie eine Sonne mir in schwere Nacht, ich zöge rasch dein süßes Herz an mich und flüstre leise dir, ich liebe An jedem Tag, der dich geboren, heil ihm, da ich zuerst dich sah, in deine Augen Glanz verloren, steh ich ein sel'ger Träumer da. Mir scheint der Himmel aufzugehen, den ich von ferne nur Moment ruf ich zum Geschicke. O Weile, es wüsstest, was Träumen heißt, von brennenden Küssen, von Wandern und Ruhen mit der Geliebten, Aug in Auge und grusend und plaudernd. Wenn du es wüsstest, du neigtest dein Herz. Wenn du es wüsstest, was Wangen heißt, in einsamen Nächten umschauert vom Sturm, dann niemand tröstet wilden Mundes die kampfmüde Seele. Wenn du es wüsstest, du kämest zu mir. Was Leben heißt, umhaucht von der Gottheit, welch offenem Atem zu schweben empor, Licht getragen zu seligen Höhen. Wenn du es wüsstest, du lebtest mit mir. On my way to work one summer day, just off the main highway, through a window in an alley smiled a lass, her name was Sally. Oh, could it be, she smiled on me. All that day before my eyes, amidst the busy world, came the image of that lovely Irish girl. And hopes would seem to rise as the clouds rise in the skies. And I thought of her and those beaming eyes. So that evening, dressed up smart and neat, I wandered down her street. At the corner of the alley was another man with Sally, and my eyes grew dim. She smiles on him and only on him. A sound of a I closed and drew, but not a gun, the refuge of the weak. I swung on the left and I swung on the right and then landed on his beak. He started to pull the same old stuff, but I closed in hard and I called his bluff. And his face is still sticking in the yellow sheet and on the billboard down the street. Between the dark and the daylight, when the night is beginning to lull, comes a pause in the day's occupations. That is known as children's hour. I hear in the chamber above me the patter of little feet, the sound of a door that is opened and voices soft and sweet. From my study I see in the lamplight descending the broad hall stair grave Alice and laughing Allegra and Edith with golden between the dark and daylight comes a pause that is known as children's Oh, the days are gone when beauty bright, when my heart's chain wove, when my dream of life from morn till night was love, still love, was still love. Oh, the days are gone when beauty bright, when my dream of life from morn till night was love, still love, from morn till night. Dream of life was love. New hopes may bloom and days may come of milder, calmer beam, but there's nothing half so sweet in life as love's young dream, as love's young dream. J'ai perdu ma poulette et j'ai perdu mon chat. Je cours à la poudrette, si Dieu me les rendra. Je vais chez Jean Lecause, chez Marie-Maria. Va-t'en voir chez Hérode, peut-être il le saura. Passons devant la salle, toute la ville était là, à danser ma poule avec mon petit chat. Les oiseaux champêtres sur les murs et sur les toits jouaient de la trompette pour le banquet du roi. Si mon marin voulait chasser au cimetière, vous me mettrez rose blanche et rose rouge. Ma tombe elle est comme un jardin rouge et blanche et blanc muguet. Quand Ivan à la Toussaint, une couronne en fapin, la porte de son jardin, en fer peint, avec des perles de satin, rose, rouge et blanc muguet. Si Dieu veut me ressusciter, au paradis je monterai, rose blanche avec un nimbe doré, rose blanche et blanc muguet. Si mon marin revenait, rose rouge et rose blanche, sur ma tombe il vient auprès, rose blanche et blanc muguet. Souviens-toi de notre enfance, rose blanche, quand nous jouions sur le quai, rose blanche et blanc muguet. Préservez-nous du feu et du tonnerre, le tonnerre court comme un poisson. Si c'est le Seigneur qui le conduit, béni soit les dégâts. Si c'est le diable qui le conduit, faites-le partir au trône d'ici. Préservez-nous des dartres et des boutons, de la peste et de la lèpre. Si c'est pour ma pénitence que vous l'envoyez, Seigneur, laissez-la moi, merci. Si c'est le diable qui le conduit, faites-le partir au trône ici. Quatre, saute de ton sac, saute de mon cou et de ma tête. Feu Saint-Elme, danse de Saint-Guy. Si c'est le diable qui vous conduit, mon Dieu, faites-le sortir d'ici. Faites que je grandisse vite et donnez-moi un bon mari qui ne soit pas trop ivrogne et qui ne me batte pas tous les soirs. Père est à la messe, ta mère au cabaret. Tu auras sur les fesses si tu vas encore crier. Ma mère était pauvresse sur la lande à oreille. Et moi je fais des crêpes en te berçant tes pieds. Si tu mourais du croup, colique ou diarrhée, si tu mourais des croûtes que tu as sur le nez, je pêcherai des crevettes à l'heure de la marée pour faire la soupe aux têtes et à besoin de crochet. Souric et Mouric, rats blancs sous les noirs, la nuit dans l'armoire pour apprendre à l'araignée à tisser sur le métier en bout droit de toile. Expédiez-le à Paris, à Quimper, à Nantes, c'est de bonne vente. Mettez-les sous deux côtés, vous achèterez en prêt des pommiers pour la saison, les trois belles vaches, un bœuf pour faire étalon. Chantez les rainettes, car voici la nuit qui vient. La nuit on les entend bien, crapauds et grenouilles. Écoutez mon mal et ma vie qui parle. Apprendrez à chanter. Like two little bank-divided brooks that wash the pebbles with their wanton streams, and having ranged and searched 1,000 nooks, beat both at length at silver-breasted Thames, wherein a greater current they conjoin. So I, my best beloved am, so he is mine. Even so we met, and after long pursuit, even so we joined. We both became in time. No need for either to renew a suit, for I was flax and he was flames of fire. Our firm united souls did more than twine. So I, my best beloved am, so he is mine. If all those glittering monarchs that command the servile quarters of this earthly ball should tender in exchange their shares of land, I would not change my fortunes for them all. Their wealth is but a counter to my coin. No world's but theirs, but my beloved's mine. No time, no place, no chance of death can bar my least desires, can bar my least desires, and to the least remove. No time, no place, no chance of death, no time, no place, no chance of death can bar my least desires, and to the least remove. He's firmly mine by oath, I is by vow. He's mine by faith, and I am his by love. He's mine by water, I am his by wine. Thus I my best beloved am, thus he is mine, thus he is mine. He's my altar, I his holy place. I am his guest, and he my living food. I'm his by penitence, he mine by grace. I'm his by purchase, he's mine by blood. He's my supporting elm, and I his vine. Thus I my best beloved am, thus he is mine. He gives me wealth, I give him all my vows. I give him songs, he gives me length of days. With wreaths of grace he crowns my longing brows, and I his temples with a crown of praise, which he accepts an everlasting sign, that I my best beloved am, that he is mine, that I my best beloved am, that he is mine, that he is mine, that he is mine.
Welcome everyone to the NATS Virtual National Conference. I'm Alan Henderson, Executive Director of NATS. And we just had a wonderful performance by Matt Hill, who was our winner of the NATS Artist Awards competition. And I am now joined by a wonderful panel of artists, which we're going to have a conversation with, who we're going to have a conversation with tonight, including Matt. And first want to congratulate Matt and thank you for a sensitive performance. And thank you to your colleagues for the wonderful production values. You might want to give a shout out to some of them before we continue.
Yeah, we couldn't have done it without our wonderful sound guy, Pedro, and our wonderful video editor, Emily. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And also, yeah, obviously Chris Kelzer, amazing job on the piano.
Great. Let's open it up by letting our current service members, so we have a panel of several current members of the Air Force Singing Sergeants. And then we also are joined by some longtime NATS members who are alums of varying service choruses and served in choirs earlier in their careers. And so we're going to go back and forth between the current experience and mix in some of the experiences of some of these longtime NATS members as well. And they can give us a little history of their experiences as well. So let's start by introducing our current Singing Sergeants members. So let's start with Katie, and just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about each of you.
Hello, my name is Katie Bauman, and I've been a Singing Sergeant for just about 2 years. 2 years ago at this time, I was at basic training, so I'm getting lots of fun memories popping up on my Facebook reminding me of that time. I came to the DC area almost 10 years ago to get my doctorate at University of Maryland as part of the opera studio, and actually knew Matt Hill way back then. We sang the Coffee Cantata together then. And I also knew Ben Park from Maryland as well before I joined the Singing Sergeants. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Taylor?
Hello, I'm Taylor Armstrong. I'm currently the music director and pianist for the Singing Sergeants, and I've been in 15 years now this summer. And I came to the Air Force via Peabody, where I was doing graduate work and knew a few people there, and studied voice and piano at Susquehanna University in Pennsylvania. And it's great to be with you all this evening.
Great. Hillary?
Hi there. I've been in Singing Sergeants for about 3 years. My name is Hillary Grovey. And I actually entered with Matt Hill. The two of us entered on the very same day into basic training. So although we didn't get to talk to each other for 9 weeks through basic training, we just were sort of experiencing it together nonetheless. But it's kind of a neat experience to go through and then arrive in Washington, D.C. and have that common bond. Yeah, so I'm excited to hear about everyone's experiences in the military choruses.
Good. Ben?
Hello, everyone. I'm Benjamin Park. I am the superintendent of the Singing Sergeants currently. I've been in just over 13 years now. I also, as Katie mentioned, I knew Matt and she at Maryland, as well as Tate Armstrong at Peabody. And Hillary, I was introduced to when she joined the group. And my last voice teacher was Dominic Cosa at Maryland, along with Katie Bauman. And he frequently spoke of George Shirley all the time. And I was unfortunately unable to make it to his retirement, at which I could have met Mr. Shirley in flesh. But yes, it's an honor to be able to be a part of this panel and to support Matt in this capacity. And we're just delighted that everyone got to see him despite the current conditions that we're in. So thank you.
Good. So it's great to hear each of your backgrounds and a little bit about how long you've been in the Singing Sergeants. Tell us a little bit about the audition experience. I know we have a lot of people listening who are students, are teachers. Many of us have had students who have been in one of the military choruses, and we hear about the audition experience from our students, but give us the nutshell version of what it takes to be successful in an audition.
Okay, well, I'll get us started at least. We have a variety of repertoire choices that we need to hear typically from incoming from auditionees. So the first thing we do is we pre-screen before we invite people to come to Washington, D.C. We hear pop, jazz, musical theater. The Air Force Band does perform in a variety of genres, so we're interested in hearing people who are multi-talented as far as repertoire goes. But I've been in a while, so I think at this point, if maybe Katie or Hillary would want to say anything more about the audition process, since they just came in the past 2-3 years.
Sure, I can say a couple of words. I loved preparing for this audition. I was preparing Puccini and Jackson 5 and Whitney Houston all in the same day. And that was such a blast to me. And I thought, if I love preparing for this audition, I just know I'm going to love the job. And I think that's sort of true. If you're not excited to sing jazz and musical theater and pop and opera and choral music all in a week's work, then maybe audition for something else. But if that gets you super excited, that's what our life is in the job. And so preparing for the audition was just like a little microcosm of that. I will say one of the most awkward moments of my life was when Sergeant Armstrong started playing the beginning of How Will I Know by Whitney Houston. And I had to sort of like dance around a little bit, really sell it to a panel of total straight faces. Like just all of the judges are just watching. And you had to be like, yeah, I'm gonna sing some pop for you. But that ability to just be in the moment of performance, no matter what you're getting from the audience, I think is one of the things that they look for in the panel is you're just there and you're having fun and you're able to sell whatever kind of music you're singing.
Yeah, I'll add to that. One of our important missions is to humanize the uniform. And so while we want to be, professional and have military bearing, it's also important that you can groove to Whitney Houston. So that's part of the audition. And someone asked, how many rounds there are. There's 2 to 3. Each audition day is a little bit different. But my favorite part of the audition was, I think it was round 3 for my day. We got to go in and it was the blending portion. So we'll sing with, I was like 7 or 8 of the current singing sergeants. And it's a really cool moment because, of course, I'd heard the singing sergeants, on YouTube, and I'd heard another military chorus live, but you never know what to expect. And so it's a two-way street to know that this is the job that I would like to take as well. And I remember very clearly singing and being like, whoa, this is great. It's an amazing group of singers to be with. And I knew that just instantaneously.
Oh, great. And Taylor, how about those that are interested in playing keyboards or the keyboard experience? How is that audition different from the singers?
Well, it depends on, we have about 4 or 5 keyboard slots in the whole United States Air Force Band right now. The newest hire is with our rock band, actually. So real focused on rock playing, ad-lib and keyboard focused. I actually, most of my training as a singer, I was in the Singing Sergeants primarily as a tenor for the first 7 years, but I've always played. And so have now just transitioned into playing a little bit more. But we've also hired another pianist with the concert band who's primarily focused on wind ensemble playing. So there are fewer keyboard jobs in the military bands, but they do come up quite often, and versatility is key. But we have room for jazz, pop. We have room for classical-based training when those openings arrive.
Mm-hmm. Is there a limit to time someone can stay in the Singing Sergeants?
So just like in the regular military, it depends on your rank. And so we in the United States Air Force Band, the premier band in DC, we come in as technical sergeants. So we currently, I think, can stay in for 22 years if we don't get promoted at all. But if you get promoted, you can stay longer, depending on how much you get promoted.
And what's your rank now, Matt?
I am a technical sergeant.
Great. Okay, great. Ben, what's the mission of the Singing Sergeants? And talk to us about the diversity of, we've heard about the diversity of music, but what about the diversity of types of performances and settings that the Singing Sergeants perform in?
Yeah, so we run the gamut, as you've heard from the audition experiences and the genres that we're expected to prepare and present in an audition. And mostly that is featured when we're on tour with the concert band. But I'd say the crux of our work is not just in the choral music for planning for state funerals and ceremonial purposes, but it's a lot of solo anthems and group national anthems for ball games and other ceremonies. But yeah, I would say that we do a lot of solo work with the concert band as well. But as Tate has mentioned, he's our music director and he's also our enlisted conductor, which is sort of an unofficial title as our choir director. And we're lucky to have him because it's not really a position that we audition for and hire for. He just happened to have that versatility and ability to provide that for us. And I would say that, yeah, we try to focus on that kind of ensemble singing, a cappella singing. And on the flip side of all this, I mean, the fact that we featured Matt Hill in a recital in uniform like this, we're the point, I guess, that we're trying to make, even with sharing him through the vehicle of NATS, is that the Singing Sergeants and other military choirs would not have the positions and the ensembles to even hire for if we didn't attain for that kind of high level of education, experience, and expectation of performance. Because when all said and done, people want to see someone in uniform that is committed to that service as well as having that education. But then they also want to know that they're being able to execute it at that level. So if your general stops by and says, "Hey, I really need someone to knock out this national anthem," you're not going to hire somebody that's an amateur and expect them to just do it without any mistakes. But we come in doing that, which is why Matt Hill comes in at that level of being a technical sergeant, in E6 rank.
Mm-hmm. Great. What is the most outrageous performance experience you've had as a part of the Singing Sergeants?
I'd just like to share one that Ben Park probably won't share of his own volition. But there's a picture in the Singing Sergeants studio of him back, I guess, a while ago. The Singing Sergeants used to wear costumes when they would perform. And Ben Park was wearing this costume of the Tin Man that he had made from basically trash that he found like outside of a Walmart. And he and a friend had like glued together like one day on the middle of tour. And it's just this big picture in our studio that I think is just so funny. But I doubt that Ben would have shared that himself.
Someone else?
You never know how music is going to reach people. Matt Hill got a little famous in Poland about a year ago or so because of our international mission. We do our support for the top levels of the military often involves entertaining foreign guests, foreign air chiefs. And Matt, do you want to tell a little bit about that story?
Sure. So, what was it? 2 weeks before this dinner at the Chief of Staff of the Air Force at his house, he was going to be entertaining some distinguished guests from Poland. generals in their Air Force, I think. And we have some Polish. There's a member of the Air Force band. His wife is from Poland, and when we asked him like, what song should we sing, and he sort of racked his brain and talked about it with his wife, and he said, there's this great song that everybody in Poland loves called Szczenisko. So then I, furiously tried to memorize this song in Polish, which I don't speak a word of, in about 2 weeks, and then I performed it at the Chief of Staff's house, and the guests really loved the performance. But also we videotaped one of the rehearsals, and the band that actually wrote the song posted this video of me during like our first ever rehearsal through the song on their Facebook, and it got literally like millions of views, like something like 3 or 4 million views. And yeah, it's just very strange because in like 10 days I had to learn this song in a language that I didn't know any Polish. Yeah, and there you go. Now I'm famous in Poland.
Those diction classes came in handy. Good old IPA, right? That's great. That's a great experience. How many performances do you all do in a year?
It varies. We do lots of solo anthems. So if you added up all the anthems, there would be hundreds. We typically, pre-pandemic, we're on the road 5 to 7 weeks a year. We've been doing a spring choral tour of about 7 to 8 days. Late winter, we travel for about 2 weeks in the spring and fall with the concert band. Then, of course, there are a lot of in-house military audience kind of more that are not open to the public, not community relations concerts. So those performances happen on military bases and for ceremonial support in the Washington, D.C. area. So if you add them all up, there would be a few hundred, but not everyone is on every performance from the singing sergeants, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's bring in some of our alums here. We have George Shirley from the Army Chorus, Nancy MacArthur Smith, who was in the Soldiers Chorus, and Kurt Hansen, who was actually in the Air Force Band, but he can tell that story in a minute, and Susan Bender, who was in the Navy Sea Chanters. So we have a nice collection. We have many other NATS members who served in service choruses, but maybe some of you want to talk about your audition experience and how it might have been different from experiences we heard from our current members.
Well, can you hear me, first of all?
Yep.
I might argue with the statement that was made before about the Air Force Band being the premier band in the area, but I won't go there. Wonderful recital, first of all. I'm sorry for being late. I had a little difficulty getting into the things for some reason, the technology and me at this point. But what I heard was very beautifully sung, and I congratulate you. I was drafted well before all of you were born, most of you. And the Army Chorus was founded in 1956, and I joined at that time. My experience was interesting in that I had heard about the chorus being formed in early '56, and they were recruiting around the country and all the universities, and 3 of my friends from Wayne University in Detroit auditioned before they were drafted, and they were accepted, so they knew where they were going. At that time, I didn't audition because, first of all, I didn't want to spend 3 years in the Army. I just started teaching. I was starting my career teaching, and 3 years was a year too long. And the second reason was because the Army Band had been formed in 1926 by General Pershing, and had never had a black member. So I figured, there's no reason for me to go to Washington and audition for this group because I won't have a chance of a snowball in Hades of getting in. So I went into the Army as a bandsman. I played euphonium in college. And after my first 8 weeks of training, or was it 9 weeks, whatever, at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, I went back as a bandsman. And after 2 weeks of playing in the band, I thought I was going to go crazy. So I, along with two of my colleagues, took a leave of absence, drove as far as Cincinnati in a little two-door Studebaker, and we knew we weren't going to make it to Virginia in that vehicle. So we bought airline tickets and we flew to Washington, arrived at the court at the Fort Myer, and my friends auditioned, and they were told by Captain Samuel Laboda, who was a chorus director at that time, who eventually became the leader of the band, told us that he told my friends, "Thank you very much for coming. We can't use you." And so I sang my audition, which was solo and then some reading. And he said, "Can you wait a few minutes?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he went into the command room. And the few minutes became about a half hour. And I thought, yeah, we're here. It's the same old, sure. But he came out and he said, "Well, we would like to have you join us if it's what you really want." And I said, "Sir, if it wasn't what I really wanted, I wouldn't have driven all night to get here." He said, "Yeah, you're right." So that was my entry into the chorus, which turned out to be a life-changing event for me because I wasn't interested in opera. I was focused on continuing my career as a high school music teacher. I had just gotten married before going into the Army, so 3 years was not it. But one of my friends kept urging me to come and sing for one of the teachers that members of the chorus were studying with in Washington. This teacher was a former tenor who had a career in Europe and the United States early last century, and he was teaching at his home. And so finally, just to get my friend to shut up and get off my back, I went and auditioned for this old guy who looked at me and said, "You study with me 1 year, I guarantee you'll have a career." Well, no one had ever said that to me before. So I talked it over with my wife, and I decided, okay, I'll give it a shot. The only opera I'd ever sung was Oedipus Rex by Stravinsky. At Wayne, the Glee Club director wanted to do a performance of it. We didn't have an opera program, so I'd had no experience in opera, but that performance, we did three. I did Oedipus. It was a great experience, but it still didn't say I was going to do this for the rest of my life. So I extended for an extra year to have an income and benefits, take care of my wife and baby. And I started studying for a career, and the end result was that career started well before I ever thought something like this would. And I got out of the Army in 1959, went to Italy, made a debut as Rodolfo, got some good reviews, came back, decided I'd enter the Met audition and auditions to win some money, but I won the contract. So all of that happened in a very short period of time. And I tell my students, just do the work that's before your nose, because you never know how it's going to turn out. So I had a great experience with the Army Chorus, and I go back to the reunions. If someone had said to me when I was drafted, I'd be going back for reunions for my Army unit, I would say, "You're out of your mind." But I look forward to them. It really was, at that time, it became a band of brothers, and I'm grateful for it.
Great. Nancy, how about your experience?
I was in the Soldiers Chorus of the U.S. Army Field Band from 1985 to 1988. And I was working in at the National Institute for Music Theater, which no longer exists. I was in arts administration and decided I didn't want to do that. I really wanted to perform. And so I heard about these premier bands because I was in DC, and I decided I was just going to audition until I got into one of them. And so the first one I auditioned for was the Soldiers Chorus, which I really wanted to be in because of all the travel. And I don't remember the audition being as hard as what you guys are describing. I remember having to sing a musical theater piece and a classical piece. I don't even remember what they were because it was a long time ago, but I got in and did basic, and I think it's very important that anybody who's thinking about doing this understand that you do the audition first. You don't you don't get you don't go to a recruiter and join up. You do the audition first, you get that document, and then you go to the recruiter. The field band is a PR branch of the Army and travels about 100 days out of the year. So I traveled all over the United States. I was in Germany. I was in Korea and Japan. I went to Alaska. I just went all over the place, and the tours were 6 weeks long. There was a spring tour and a fall tour, and they were 6 weeks. Then there were summer tours, and then there were what we called run-out gigs, which is basically you get on the bus and you go drive someplace and do a concert and tear it down. And I sang. It was a wonderful experience for me, and was a wonderful preparation for teaching, because I sang so many different kinds of music, which I've ended up doing as a teacher, teaching so many different kinds of music. But there were chamber concerts in Annapolis that I loved doing. I did sang for, the national anthem for games. I sang some beautiful choral music. We sang at what we called O clubs, officers club gigs, where we would go and do popular songs from World War I, World War II. I remember also that we had huge audiences, just huge audiences. When we would go out on the road, we would just have we would perform in all different kinds of spaces, and we would have gigantic audiences, and the kids would, they were often outdoors, and the kids would just be twirling around, dancing in the grass, and it was an amazing experience. So I would recommend it to anybody who wants to experience that. It was a great way to start off my performance career.
Great. Susan, share your story with us.
Well, I'm a Maryland grad. Well done, y'all. And it was, I went to Maryland to study with Jim McDonald, who was, and Mr. Shirley was actually on the faculty at Maryland when I arrived there. So I had songlets, and all of us were scared chickens when we saw Mr. Shirley in the audience. Oh my God, I had memorized that German well enough to be artistic, because he had such a high bar for all of us. But like many good things, the sea chanters, like many good things in my life, sort of fell into my lap, and my audition was not anything like what y'all went through. I was singing at the Shrine and going to school part-time. I was running out of money, and I was standing next to a woman who was married to one of the arrangers in the Navy band. And after one rehearsal, she just said, the Sea Chanters is a much smaller group, or it used to be. I think they have more billets now. But when I was in it, there were only 16 singers. So it was much more like a chamber group than what you all have in either the field chorus or the men's chorus or the Air Force. And so they were looking for a very specific kind of voice to match the ones they had. And I think I was only the 9th woman to be in the Sea Chanters. The Sea Chanters had been all men, and once they couldn't sing about the drunken sailor anymore, and womanizing on shore, they decided, oh, we need some women to sort of legitimize the group and make it SATB and sort of expand the offerings and the repertoire that you could do. I auditioned, I think, with Blonda and Manon and some Ives, that just like you sang tonight so beautifully. And I was the only person auditioning, because the wife of the arranger had said, Jerry, she's fabulous, and they had stopped looking, actually, for a soprano. And they said, I think you're going to like her. And I went in and I sang, and I sight read Palestrina, and they offered me the job the very next day. I didn't have to dance, thank goodness. I didn't have to sing any pop tunes. I don't know that I would have passed the audition. So back this is in 1985 to 1989. I stayed in for one tour. But so I did the audition, did boot camp, and came back, and they were auditioning for within the group Johnny Skiki. And so we did some stuff at Maryland, we did some stuff out at Montgomery Community College. We actually did full operas, and we used the Marine String Orchestra. So I got to do some nice roles, not in a military uniform, but in a military band with my colleagues. And I was so very surprised that they were up for tackling these things. I won a competition when I was in my second year, kind of like you did, Matt. A lot of notoriety comes with the Met competition, and all of a sudden I was touring with the band. The arrangers made, I sang O Luce di Quest'anima 60 nights in a row with clarinets as strings, just like the old RCA recordings. And I sang Mozart with the band, and I got to solo a lot with the band because the arrangers were so fabulous. They said, what do you want to sing? Well, how about the Silver Aria from Ballad of Baby Doe? Okay. And they would just do it. It was amazing. The military bands and choruses have some of the finest musicians and some of the finest people in them. And it was my path to leave. I wasn't married, I didn't have a house, I was debt free, and I thought, if I'm gonna do other things, I could get real comfortable in this job. But I decided I wanted to do some other things, and so I left after one tour, but I was green, I was wet behind the ears when I joined them, and I really learned how to show up for work and lay it in, come what may. If you were sick as a dog, well, you just got yourself together and you walked out on stage and you did it, and then you could fall apart later. But yeah, it was a great growth experience for me. It's hard to go to school. The Navy has great benefits. All the military bands have great benefits for going to school. But if you're out on the road 3 months a year or 6 weeks for spring and fall, that's a challenge. But I found most of the universities in the DC metro area are very happy to have military musicians in their programs, and they'll be flexible when and if they can. So I feel like I was just a lucky dog to sort of stand next to Ginny Brubaker and her husband being an arranger for the band. I was the only one who auditioned. That was the one and only time that happened. So that's kind of my story.
Great. And Kurt, tell us your story about auditioning for the band.
Well, I want to start out with a shout out to Matt. Beautiful, beautiful job. And I was smiling at the end because I'm actually a Britten fanatic, but I've never done Canticle 1, and I'm working on it this summer. I also am a bit of an interloper here, and I share something with Mr. Shirley. I came into the band program as a clarinet player and not as a singer. And I want to correct Alan a little bit. I was not in the U.S. Air Force Band. I was in the band career field during the Vietnam era, 68 to 72. And I did go to the recruiter first. And everybody and his brother was being drafted at that time. And I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. And so I went to the recruiter and I said, I'd like to audition for the SAC band, Strategic Air Command, which is now STRATCOM. And I remember the recruiter sat up and said, oh, you must be good. Well, I played clarinet through high school and 1/4 of marching band while I was at Northwestern, but that was it. Then I sang. And I thought, okay, I'll get an audition and I'll have some time to prepare. And so they called the SAC band and arranged for me to audition the next morning. So I had overnight to try to become competent again on the clarinet, and it was like having on mittens and lips that were made out of jello. And I went down for my audition, and I don't mind saying, I don't think it's I sucked. I was terrible. And the person that heard my audition, huge influence while I was in the service, his name was Jay Walker. He was a chief master sergeant, the NCOIC of that band. And so after the audition, and it was just for him, we went down to see the major. His name was James Rowland. He later became manager of the Omaha Symphony. And Major Rowland said, "How was the audition?" And I didn't think anything about it. And I said, "Look, I'm really not a clarinetist. I'm a singer, and I would love to sing for you." And at this point, it was not trying to get into the band, because they didn't have at that time career fields in field bands for singers, only instrumentalists. And so he said, okay. So I sang Maria, and I think I sang Bach Uno Ave Maria, and basically to an empty room. They stood behind me as I sang. And then he asked again, how was the clarinet audition? And I didn't know enough to think that this was any sort of an issue. I just wanted to prove that I didn't suck. And Jay Walker said, well, it's a little rusty. And so I remember Major Rowland sort of nodding at me and saying, well, you're in. And I couldn't believe this. I couldn't believe it. So I spent 2 years, and Major Rowland was a bit of an operator. And so it was an all-wind band, and it was all male. And he had a string trio in the band, and he wanted a glee club. So I was really brought in to play just enough clarinet to get by, but really to start a glee club. And I'm listening to the backgrounds of my other colleagues here, and we had people from Curtis and Juilliard and North Texas State and really heavy hitters in the band. And so I started a glee club. They were called the Voices of SAC. I will leave it to my service compatriots to guess what we in the band called that group. But I spent my last 2 years at PACAF headquarters in Honolulu, and that was an unusual experience. The band was quite good, but there were 3 military bands on the island of Oahu at that time, and we fought over grade schools. And we thought that if you had a 3-day weekend, that was really, a 4-day week was really hard. But we had a lot of time off, and you were talking about gigs that were the strangest, and without a doubt, the strangest that we had in Hawaii was it was decided that the band wasn't working hard enough. And so it was decided that we were going to play Retreat live once a week. And on most military bases, they play a recording of Retreat and everybody stands still and salutes. But we were going to play it live once a week. So the first time that we were supposed to do this, we get out to the flagpole in front of base headquarters, and we're standing there, and the major is looking at his watch to make sure that we begin at the right time. And 5 o'clock rolls around, and he raises his baton, and the recording of Retreat goes off around the entire base. So he got a look on his face like he was ready to eat his baton, and he turned around, and we're trying desperately not to shake as we're all laughing, standing there with our instruments listening to Retreat. But I want to say that my experience in the Air Force band career field as a singer gave me a great amount of opportunity to try different things. I did some arranging. I conducted a glee club, and I came out after 4 years with a real sense of confidence and went to graduate school feeling like, yeah, now I know what I want to do. I'm very honored to be part of this group.
Great. Thanks, Kurt. Let's talk about to our current members and talk a little bit about when you're not touring, what is a typical day like for you?
So the real truth to this answer is that there's no typical week. So we have a variety of missions, whether it's doing things for the military, like singing at the Secretary of the Air Force's house, or performing at the White House, or performing for the Vice President at the Naval Observatory. All of those things can happen in the course of a week, and we can also sing. There was one day where I sang a Redskins anthem in the morning, and then I went to the National Cathedral and we sang this Air Force service because it was the Air Force's 70-something birthday. And then we went down to National Harbor and we sang another rehearsal for a national anthem that we had the following day down at National Harbor for this Air Force Association conference. So, even while we're here in DC and not on tour, a day can look very different, but usually days, just like sort of a regular week, we have rehearsals during the daytime, and then everybody in the group has other jobs, like I'm the librarian in the group. Hillary does our operations, so she works on our calendar and makes sure that everybody knows when we're supposed to be at what gigs. Ben is the superintendent. I mean, they can all talk more about their other jobs, but so if we're not doing rehearsals sort of during the daytime, then we're doing our other jobs that support our mission as performers.
So your other jobs that you do are within the unit.
Exactly. Yeah, if any other members want to talk about sort of their other jobs that they do, feel free to jump in.
Sure. So yeah, our primary duty is to sing in the Air Force. A lot of people after concerts will say, "Oh my gosh, you have a beautiful voice. So you fly planes?" And we often have to say our primary duty is singing. But we do. It's a self-run entity, the United States Air Force Band, and so we take care of our tour planning, our own scores, score prep. We run marketing for all of our own missions. So everyone has a job that contributes. And I think that's kind of a neat entity. I was, as many freelance singers, I was always thinking of, a second career. I could bring in some money flow. And I was always interested in arts administration. And so it's actually a blessing for me to be able to combine, singing as a career as well as arts administration. And so, yeah, I would say it depends on where you are. If you're a tech sergeant, it's typically 80% singing, 20% admin. And then as you rank up, you gain more responsibilities and more leadership roles within the military. And so it might, Ben, you might be able to speak to it. It might turn more into 20% singing and 80% admin, although we're always continuing to work on our craft throughout.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, I would say the singing sergeants, being the only official course in the entire United States Air Force, we have the benefit of getting to do our primary duty more than most other people would not. If you're an instrumentalist in a concert band, you're predominantly playing your instrument, but then as you, like Hillary said, you promote your the performance side, the technical sergeant aspect of just performing and doing that subsides, and the pendulum swings into the administrative stuff. And just like Hillary said, we are our own entity, much like unlike other arts organizations where the performers, if you're unionized, you just come in, you rehearse, you watch the clock, and you leave. We don't have that luxury. We rehearse until we're done, and then we also strike our own stages and take care of all of our equipment and plan the tours and work out all of every single aspect that you wouldn't normally do if as a performer. It's rewarding, if anything, though.
That's great.
Can I ask a question to that? Do you have a crew that, because back in the day, there was a crew that took care of all of the administrative and stuff that surrounded our performing. And is that true in your case? Because what I'm understanding is that you, the singers, have to do a lot of that kind of thing rather than maybe not moving some risers or something like that. But we didn't have to do that. I spent most of my time in trying to fulfill my financial support for my family. We had jobs like church jobs, and I also sold Bibles and dictionaries at one point, and did lead sheets for a popular group called Link Ray and the Raymen, so that they could get their music published. But so you have to do a lot of administrative work for the organization. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yeah, short answer is yes. And we do move risers. We wrap cables and push boxes, and yeah, we put things on the truck. Yeah, we do it all.
We do have an operations team that is their entire jobs, their primary duty is to sort of run our scheduling and operations. But at the flight level, the singing sergeants, the United States Air Force Band, we do quite a bit of that work. So it's a good team effort for sure.
So one of the questions we have from our audience is, who is the most awesome person for whom you have performed? That's the way it's written. So let's let everybody answer that one. Let's make the rounds. Hillary?
This isn't necessarily the most awesome person, but one of my very favorite missions that we have, we sing for funerals of any president who passes. And that's a big part of what we do. Once a year we get together with a joint choir. So I'm sure many of you have experienced this. And I love that, coming together and preparing for what may or may not happen that year. But the Bush funeral last year was a really, really amazing event to be a part of. Just to be in the room with every sitting president that is alive, it was an honor, and yeah, just amazing to be part of that history, a privilege.
Mm-hmm. Someone else, one of our alums.
May I jump in?
Sure.
I would say one of the best missions that we have is performing for veterans, and we do these performances at our home base, at our hangar, and where veterans from all over the country will come over, usually by state. So a group from Texas, for instance, might come and enjoy seeing the monuments in DC, and then they'll come by our hangar and we'll do a performance for them. And there are always at least a couple of World War II vets who are over 100 years old, and we sing music from the 40s, and they sing along and they dance, and they will comment to us that they're just transported to when they were 22 and getting ready to ship out. And it's one of the most difficult missions, because I think I'm going to cry the whole time, but it's so fulfilling to get to see their faces and sort of take them back to that time.
That's great. Who else wants to answer that question?
I think my very last gig was playing for Nixon on his way to China when they were opening China, and they landed in at Hickam to refuel on their way, and we played a big event for him, and that was my last job.
Great. Yep, Susan?
I think you guys will probably all understand this, but the big things that are televised nationally, or a dedication to a new monument, it looks great on TV. But I remember I got to sing the national anthem for the dedication of the Navy Memorial on Pennsylvania Avenue. But we had to be there at 5 in the morning, and it was in November, and I think it was 28 degrees all day. And you're sitting on that stage waiting for everybody to assemble and waiting for the dignitaries to arrive. But it was all worth it because Tony Curtis showed up too, because he was a big Navy guy. And he was pretty. He was pretty. So I got to sing for Tony.
That's a great one. That's a great story.
We sang at the Kennedy Center Honors actually shortly after I joined. And I remember looking out in the audience and seeing, just like, I think Meryl Streep was there and Julie Andrews was there. And I just remember like having to think like, okay, you just gotta keep it together. Just think about singing. Don't look at everybody who's out there. But yeah, just looking out and seeing. Yeah, I had the biggest crush on Julie Andrews when I was a child from watching this Sound of Music, and seeing her like there and I was on stage was just felt pretty surreal to me.
Yeah.
So I remember during a bicentennial of something or other in New York at the Statue of Liberty and singing backup for John Denver. And John Denver was very, very nice. And
I was there. We were there at the same time.
I think we were combined. I think we were there at the same time.
We were combined. I did that gig, yes.
Yeah.
That was a long, windy day.
It was. It was. I mean, he was also there too. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty neat.
It's great. Well, those are some great memories I know that each of you have from your service. And I'm pretty sure if you look in your digital program book, singing sergeants are hiring right now, I think. So I think there's an ad in the program book, perhaps. But there's also an ad in general about the singing sergeants. So it has all the contact information and it outlines some of the things that you need to do. So you want to tell us a little bit about that, Matt or Ben?
Sorry, I'm trying to think of. I think right now we have an opening actually for our rock band which is called Max Impact. Yeah, and we're looking for someone who can, shred it in the pop and rock genre. Obviously, it's great to come from a classical background, but yeah, that's I think the current opening. But yeah, we're always. I mean, job openings happen pretty regularly, so keep a lookout.
Good. Well, we're at past our time limit actually, and it's been such a great opportunity to have all of you together tonight to share your experiences, recent and less recent, in some of the military choruses. I think it's so great that our military band organizations are looking for great singers. They want people who can really deliver and have great skills and have diverse skills. And so we want to continue to, as NATS members, I think, we want to continue to remind our students about this as a great opportunity for singing, for income, for a job, and just to do something you love, and to be able, as Katie and some of the others so wonderfully said, just sing such a great variety of literature and enjoy exploring the diversity of your own voice and the abilities that you have to bring. So I'm so grateful for all of you joining us. Thanks, NATS members, for being here tonight. Tomorrow we kind of move into high gear with a lot of things happening, and so until tomorrow morning Eastern time, at least at 11. I hope you have a good evening and enjoy the rest of the conference.